This is my 2018 iPad Pro, and it is by far the oldest Apple product that I still use. And the reason why I haven't upgraded to a newer model is because I honestly haven't had a need to upgrade. Like, the only upgrades that I would get for the 2022 model would be the more powerful M2 chip and the lighter module on the back. None of which I actually care for, especially when the A12X inside of this still performs extremely well. However, next year's iPad Pro is rumored to finally be a redesign, with a ton of new features. So here are 9 things you need to know about the next gen iPad Pro. Oh, and if you have a current gen iPad, I highly recommend giving Paperlike, our sponsor for this video, a try. Paperlike offers several brilliant iPad accessories, with their pencil grips, enabling an enhanced level of precision alongside increased comfort, and they now come in a new charcoal color too. Their all-in-one screen cleaning kit gives you a pristine display to work on, which combined with the Paperlike screen protector will bring you the best creative experience yet. Check out Paperlike by using the link below. And now, back to the video. The first thing that will change with this next-gen iPad Pro is, of course, the design. Mark Gurman claims that next spring is when the iPad Pro will be getting a major revamp. Okay, so what could a new iPad Pro design look like? Well, it depends on how Apple wants to play. Like, do they want to play safe or do they want to play a bit more ambitious? Well, let's assume the safe approach first. Looking at the front, there isn't much that Apple could change, aside from making the bezels a bit thinner and repositioning the front-facing camera to a landscape orientation. We have heard this rumor before that the iPad Pro will switch to a landscape Face ID to facilitate video calls whilst using the Magic Keyboard. Apple even made this change recently with a 10th gen entry-level iPad. Now, the back is where most of the changes will come. The Apple logo is likely to get rotated to a landscape orientation too, which is something that not only the rumors were saying, but it would also make a lot of sense, with Apple pushing this landscape use for the iPad more and more. The camera orientation is also likely to get updated to better match the design on the iPhones. We've then updated the color in our concept to give it a slightly darker space gray look, as well as updated the frame, which we rounded to make it match the upcoming iPhone 15's redesigned frame. We then repositioned the power button to the right-hand side to clean up the design and make it easier to reach, especially on the larger model. We also made the Apple Pencil strip longer for added strength, and finally, we gave it a second Thunderbolt port on the other side, which will be crucial, especially considering Apple's plans to turn this iPad into an even more powerful laptop replacement. So what about that more ambitious approach? Well, the back would likely look the same as on this approach, but the front could have bezels as thin as on the iPhone and with a dynamic island. Now, this does indeed look like the next-gen iPad Pro. It looks far more futuristic as opposed to the other design that looks more or less the same as the current model, at least from the front. I definitely do want to see that dynamic island version happen, but in the end, it does depend on how Apple sees the future of the dynamic island. Like, we know that it is coming to the regular iPhone 15s, and we also know that iOS 17 will bring some dynamic island improvements. Whether or not they would also bring this to the iPad and the Mac, we'll have to wait and see. It is quite interesting how they did bring the notch to the Mac, but not to the iPad. Maybe it has to do with the fact that the iPad is a device that you would constantly rotate from landscape to portrait, whereas with the iPhone and the Mac, you would mostly use them in the same orientation, especially the Mac. Of course, do remember that having a dynamic island also means that part of your content would be cut, which wouldn't be the case with simply thinner bezels. Okay, the second thing to know about is that these new iPad Pros will actually come in more than just 2 sizes. So the 11-inch model will stay, so will the 12.9, which will get bumped to 13 inches, but there is a rumor of a larger 14 or even a 16-inch iPad Pro. Personally, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to have both a 13-inch and a 14-inch iPad Pro available. If anything, they would introduce a 15-inch or a 16-inch model like we've seen rumored, so that the difference between all the models is a bit more significant. And even though the 16-inch iPad Pro might seem way too large, to be honest, for people who do use an iPad Pro as their main laptop, this will indeed make a lot of sense. The third change is OLED. OLED will definitely be a big improvement even on the larger models that feature mini LED right now, as OLED will get rid of all of that blooming. However, OLED tablets up until now have had a much lower brightness of around 400 nits as opposed to 1600, which is what we have on a 12.9-inch mini LED iPad Pro. So to solve this, Apple is now working on dual stacked OLED panels with much higher brightness levels than what we normally have. Also, prototypes are set to feature a significantly lighter display, with Apple's main focus being to increase the display quality whilst also reducing the weight of these iPads. Now that is very interesting because iPads were never heavy to begin with. So this is likely another hint at the larger models. The fourth big change will likely be an always-on display. The ELEC reports that the new OLED iPads will also be LTPO panels, with a refresh rate lower than the current 24 Hz. And not only that, but a recent iPadOS 17 leak mentioned that Apple is adding OS-level support for the next-gen OLED iPads. Now, simply changing the LCD panel into an OLED doesn't require any software changes, unless of course that OLED also brings always-on functionality. Another change is dual 6K monitor support, according to leaker Anonymous AS, for the largest iPad Pro model. Now, he's referring to a 14.1-inch model, which again could be 15 or 16 inches, but this also means that this larger iPad Pro will indeed have dual Thunderbolt 4 ports, just like in our concept. The sixth major change is said to be a custom version of iPadOS specifically made for the larger model. We don't really know what this custom iPadOS version would feature, but it is likely that it would be more optimized for the larger display. And I also expect this larger iPad to be able to run even more apps side by side, possibly a total of 3 or even 4. At number 7, we have the M3 chip. Now, the M3 chip is set to launch by the end of the year, likely in October or November, alongside the updated 13-inch MacBook Air and the updated 13-inch MacBook Pro. So March 2024 would actually make a lot of sense for the release of these new iPad Pros, as that would be about 4 to 5 months after the introduction of the M3 chip. And that was actually the exact time frame that we had between the launch of the M2 chip with the MacBook Air and the launch of the M2 iPad Pros. What's interesting here is that the higher-end iPad, according to Anonymous AS, will actually come with not an M3 chip, but an M3 Pro chip, which does make a lot of sense. Dual monitor support will likely require the power of the M3 Pro chip, especially when you consider 6K displays. Not only that, but remember the lighter display that I was talking about before? Well, prototypes of it were using a dry etch process to reduce the weight and add a special coating to increase its durability because of how thin it was. So it is likely that the reason why Apple is also looking into making this dual stacked OLED display as thin as possible is because they need room inside this larger iPad for that M3 Pro chip. Now, this larger iPad Pro might not even be called iPad Pro. Instead, it could be called iPad Ultra or iPad Studio, according to leaker Anonymous AS. And this does make a lot of sense, as it seems like this larger model will be superior in terms of performance and expandability, and not just be, a larger model. Apple did the same with the Apple Watch when they introduced the Apple Watch Ultra model. And we've also heard some rumors of them doing the same with the iPhone 15 Pro Max, calling it an Ultra due to its Periscope module being exclusive to it. So calling the largest iPad Pro the iPad Ultra will make a lot of sense. But something that might not make a lot of sense is the price. As according to the ELEC, these upcoming iPads would be extremely expensive, with the 11-inch model now set to start from $1,500. That's almost double the current $800 price point. Then the new 13-inch is set to start from $1,800, and of course that larger 14 or 16-inch iPad Ultra would likely start from like $2,100 or even higher. This is of course without a keyboard or the Apple Pencil, so if you add those in, the price would go up even more. And this is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, sure, the OLED dual stack displays will increase the cost, something that the ELEC also states. And a new design with potentially super thin bezels and a dynamic island would increase the cost even more. But I generally don't see people willing to pay more than a MacBook for an iPad that doesn't even have a keyboard. So what do you guys think? Would you pay this much for the next gen iPad Pro, or would you simply prefer getting a MacBook instead? I mean, sure, you won't get a touchscreen or an Apple Pencil or 5G, but at least you will get better performance in a form factor that is still very portable and very capable. Do subscribe for our upcoming video on the iPhone 15 Pro. We got some fresh, big new leaks to talk about. I'm Daniel, ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.